Okay, let's go.
Welcome back to the End Zone. Today we're going to go ahead and discuss, right before the trade deadline, what teams we think should be selling and what teams have a legitimate chance to keep pushing on to the playoffs. As always, if you like our content, please go ahead and drop us a like and subscribe for more. We're going to go ahead and get right started. First up, starting off with the AFC East. Going to ignore the Dolphins and the Bills. Obviously, they're going to be going to the playoffs. The next two teams we have up are the New York Jets and the New England Patriots. So we're going to start off with the Jets. Do you think they should sell, or do you think they kind of have still a shot to make that wild card? Go ahead and start with Brandon.
I'm a little bit torn on them. I don't want them to sell. I think they have a good team to build on, but I think they could try and make it. Honestly, I think they do try and make it because they have a young team, young core that they should try and build off of, and it wouldn't make sense to get rid of that just off one major injury. And I mean, you saw it against the Chiefs. What is it? What's their quarterback's name? I'm drawing a blank right now. Zach Wilson. Yeah, he showed a little bit of bright spot, so maybe try and coach him up, get him in that spot. I mean, I know he's been at the Jets for a little bit now. He should know and be doing a little bit better, but he's shown a little bit of bright that I think you can build off of. So try and make the push for wild card.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Brandon. I think their defense has been playing really lights out, really good football, which is always a good thing. It's usually kind of the harder thing to build, so it's good to see that they have a defense established. They have a lot of young talent on offense still. I mean, Breece Hall's going to come back in a pretty good way. Had some really nice games so far through this first half of the season. Garrett Wilson, I think, is still a superstar, really great wide receiver one. Zach Wilson has shown a little bit of improvement, a little bit of maturity, kind of, started off obviously rough after Aaron Rodgers went down, but seems like he's kind of figuring some things out. Pretty decent run game, not a bad O-line at all, a really solid wide receiver one. I think there's a lot to build off of. I don't know, they're in their division. It's hard with Miami and Buffalo to say that they'll make the playoffs, but I don't think they need to sell the shop yet. I think there's enough there that if it's Zach Wilson or if they see somebody that they like coming up in this next draft and want to try again with a quarterback, they could throw somebody in there, maybe build up the offensive line a little bit more at a wide receiver too. They're not super far away. And I think Robert Saleh is a great head coach. So I think he'll get things figured out. It's just the growing pains of the organization he inherited.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you guys. I think that they really shouldn't be selling the barn off. I don't know if you guys were watching the game, but Aaron Rodgers was warming up before practice, and he was actually moving around pretty well on that Achilles. They did lose 2 offensive linemen this week to IR, so that kind of is a little bit of a blow. But to me, if the Jets are able to win and squeak out a few more wins, and if Aaron Rodgers is potentially able to come back, let's say week 16 or 17, it'd be really interesting to see, because I do think that this is a football team that could potentially break loose, and if they go on a little bit of a win streak, they're definitely not out of the wild card picture, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think they're a quarterback away.
I do want to add on to what y'all are saying too. I know we're not touching on the Bills too much this week because they are obviously going to make a push, but they're definitely a beatable team. I think they could overtake them in the division.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Wanted to bring that up, so thank you, Brandon.
All right, next team up in the AFC East, we have the New England Patriots, currently sitting at 2-6. What do y'all think? Sell the farm or try and make a push?
In my opinion, there's not much to sell there. I don't think it's I think they are going to make a push. I mean, it's Belichick. I mean, he's kind of on, I don't want to say his way out, but I think the clock has started for him a little bit. I mean, he is getting up there, and I mean, retirement's probably starting to look at him a little bit.
Well, he just got an extension before the season, so he'll be there for a couple more years at least, unless he gets
nonetheless.
That's not confirmed, Paul.
But either way, regardless, it's probably his last extension. Probably not coaching that much longer. I think they are going to try and make a push. I don't know if it's going to be futile, but I think they will. I don't think, like I said, there's not a whole lot to sell, but we'll see. I mean, the Patriots have done crazier things before, and it may not make the playoffs, but they may be enough to harpoon someone's season, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Belichick's the type of guy to like kind of give up, I guess. So he's definitely going to do whatever it takes. I don't really know what that will entail with the team that he has because they aren't that good. But I don't think it's in Belichick's nature to try and tank. So I don't know. Patriots are in a very weird spot right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think that they're really going to tank. They're a team that doesn't really necessarily enjoy tanking. I know their fans don't for sure, but I really don't see, like you guys said, I don't think there's much there to sell. I know Trent Brown's a decent offensive lineman, maybe like Juju Smith-Schuster if you could package him in to get some picks. I know they have an edge rusher. I can't think of it on the top of my mind, but they have an edge rusher on the end of his rookie deal, and he's got some true talent and he's shown some promise. So maybe there's that. But long story short, I think that you guys kind of hit the nail with the hammer. I really don't think that Bill Belichick's going to continue to remain as the head coach and GM. I think that he'll still remain head coach after this year, but I think his GM duties are definitely getting relieved.
Yeah, you could make a first or league first kind of trade. You could package Juju into a trade him over to another team's marketing department, maybe. Yeah, have him do some TikTok dances for him. Yeah.
Didn't know where you were going with that.
I mean, you guys are. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but like I could see the Chiefs needing him back. I mean, they don't really have consistent wide receiver help, and I mean, he
from the resident Chiefs fan, how do you feel about that?
Juju didn't play a single down last week until both wide receivers went down, so he was acting as their fifth string receiver, and it's not like they had great receivers to bury him in the depth chart. But moving along here, we got the AFC North. Kind of just going to breeze over. I think all these teams are competitive. Everyone has a shot for both of those wild card spots. Baltimore sitting at 6-2, and then the rest of the bunch, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati are all sitting at 4-3. Obviously, with outside of Pittsburgh and just losing Kenny Pickett, we'll wait to see on how long that injury is going to be. Who knows if it's season ending? Obviously, their season's going to be over. Trubisky's not taking them anywhere, and their defense, their secondary has been giving up a lot of air yards, so I don't think that they're stopping keeping anybody in the game. But do y'all think any of them should look to be tanking or give up on the playoffs?
I kind of think Steelers. Trubisky, he had a kind of a rough step in. What did he throw? 1 or 2 picks? I forget what it was. They do have some pieces that are of value. I think it would be probably a decent time for them to consider a good rebuild and reset for next season. I don't think it'd be a long-term rebuild necessarily, but I think if you shuffle around a few pieces, maybe look for draft capital, pick up a quarterback for this next draft, and it's heavy quarterback class. I think they'd be a good candidate to try and rebuild.
I think they just need to get rid of Matt Canada, what we've been saying all year, because I don't really think it's I still don't think it's a talent issue in Pittsburgh. I watched some of the game yesterday, and yes, Trubisky threw at least 2 interceptions because I was flipping back and forth between CBS and Fox, and I think every time in the fourth quarter of that game that I flipped over to the Steelers game, Trubisky threw a pick, and it was comical by the second or third one. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not completely out on Pickett. I don't think it's his fault. When George Pickens wants to be, he is a super talented wide receiver. Najee is concerning, obviously. And then I think the O-line is definitely in need of a nice rebuild. Defensive secondary, like Paul said, is pretty banged up. But they still have, probably one of, if not the best defensive player in the league, TJ Watt, who can take over games, and a lot of good pieces around him with a defense that keeps him in the game. But I think with Pickett being out, Matt Canada is still the offensive coordinator. I don't see him making the playoffs this year out of a pretty tough AFC North. So at least so far. I mean, it's hard to believe that division's so competitive, but
probably the most competitive in football right now.
I'd say so. And Joe's awake, so good luck.
Yeah, no, I think that I'd agree with y'all. I don't know if they're really necessarily going to make a huge playoff push, but I would have to tend with Ryan. I think that Matt Canada has not done his job. I'm surprised that he still has a job. And to be frank, I think that the fact that they can't get the ball in their playmakers' hands is ridiculous. Like Pickens, anytime he's given an opportunity, that guy makes plays. So for him to only be getting like 1 or 2 targets a game is kind of ridiculous to me. Their run game has been not really efficient, and I think that Matt Canada really wants to rely on that. But I mean, if you're not able to actually produce, and not necessarily produce, but like if you can't build off of that and that's your main scheme, I mean, I don't see how you're going to have your quarterback, your 2 quarterback build off play action if they can't even get a run game going. So like you guys mentioned, I don't know if Mitch Trubisky is going to be much better. In fact, I think he's a little bit of a downgrade from Kenny Pickett. But I really would have to just say that if they can get a new offensive coordinator, they do have a young core on offense. Again, Najee has been a little concerning, but I still think that, he still has a potential to bust loose again once they get their offensive line in check. Their defense still solid. They do have some young players there as well, and some guys that are still under contract. So I wouldn't necessarily say that they're a seller, but as far as terms of buying, I don't know if I would take any leaps just yet. I think they need to get their coaching staff aligned out first.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't want to bring in more young guys and still have a crappy coaching staff trying to call plays and everything. So adding people won't really change what's happening with the Steelers right now. And I'm not one to talk bad about Mike Tomlin because I think he's a phenomenal coach. But when your defense has 3 turnovers and you still find a way to talk crap about them like you did, that was I didn't like that. The defense did everything that they could yesterday, even being depleted to win that game. It was not the defense's fault. So I don't know what that was about, but it was really interesting to see today. So.
All right. Yeah, moving along to the AFC South here. We got a fairly non-competitive division in terms of playoff. A lot of young teams in the midst of their rebuilds. Right now, currently standing in the lead is Jacksonville Jaguars at 6-2. They're on top of the world right now. They're 5-0 in the last 5 games, so they're doing pretty well. I think they're easily going to make the number 1 spot for this division unless someone ends up getting hurt. As recently as before, if you asked me before last week, I thought the Titans were going to be selling the ship, but Will Levis comes in, throws 4 touchdowns, and it's 1 game, but if he can maintain it, I think they may be in that running for the wild card position. What do y'all think about as far as the Texans and the Colts and then the Titans as well? What do y'all think with that?
For the Titans, I want to touch on them because for their sake and sanity, I wish Levis would have had this game last week, or not this past weekend, but the weekend before that, not right at the trade deadline. That way you could see 2 weeks and see if it's a consistent thing, or if he was just pissed and came in with a chip on his shoulder and balled out type thing.
That breakup got him bad, man.
Yeah, no shit. He finally got the spotlight and decided to go. But as far as the division, I think the Colts, they're not in the running for it. I don't think they're necessarily in a playoff contention, especially with Richardson, I think, done for the year, correct? Yep. Texans, kind of similar boat. Not major injuries there, but I don't think they're necessarily in playoff running. If anything, they're in the Caleb Williams area sweepstakes, not drafting Caleb Williams, but in that area, top 5 draft pick, or I guess Cardinals have it.
They're a young team, so no one is expecting them to make.
There's no need to sell there. I think most of the division's pretty straightforward, honestly. I think Jaguars kind of have it in the bag.
Yeah, I agree. It's Jaguars are kind of a steam engine rolling right now, really finding their stride. Etienne's having a hell of a year. Seems like if Ridley doesn't do good, Kirk picks up the slack, or Evan Ingram picks up the slack. I don't know. They kind of got it rolling right now. So, and even like some of these games on their win streak haven't been pretty offensively, but they're, the biggest thing in football is finding a way to win. So, seems like they got it locked down pretty well. Honestly, I enjoyed watching Will Levis ball out this weekend. I don't know about y'all. Felt good to see him just after kind of all the stuff with the draft, and then the breakup thing that I mentioned when Brandon was talking was a joke, but if you've seen her, must have been pretty tough. I'm not completely out on the Texans. I agree that they're a young team. There wasn't really any expectations going into it with a first-year head coach, rookie quarterback. But I think what we've seen so far through the first half of this season, there is maybe not this year, but I think they're building something pretty special here in Houston. So I don't know, maybe stroke of luck, they kind of catch steam again. This loss this past week was pretty bad, but who knows? But yeah, I think the Jags probably have it locked down. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if another AFC South team didn't even make it in the playoffs. So.
Yeah, no, I think that the Jaguars kind of have it on lock. I would say that the Titans, man, I still think they're a team that no one wants to play against. They're tough. They're a gritty football team, led by Mike Vrabel. I think that they're always going to be a well-coached unit defensively. And as far as the offense goes, I mean, I think that it just shows that Tannehill really wasn't producing. I mean, when this guy's already got more touchdown passes in one game that Tannehill has had in the past 6 or 7. Just kind of goes to show that that maybe it just really was time for a new change. And I think the Titans, I wouldn't necessarily name them as sellers. I think that Derrick Henry is still a great running back for them and still a good weapon. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins just showed you on Sunday that he's still very, very productive. And I just want to point out they do have a pretty not necessarily easy stretch of games, but some winnable games ahead. Looks like they have the Steelers, Bucks, Jags, Panthers, and Colts. So, I mean, not necessarily an easy stretch, but I mean, if they're able to win half of those or 3/4 of those games, I mean, that definitely puts them in wild card contention. As far as the Texans go, I agree with y'all. I don't know if they're necessarily needing to sell by any means necessarily, but I don't know if they're necessarily in the buyers portion just yet. I wouldn't give them, an opportunity to go get a aging veteran to help push them over the hump just yet. I think that maybe give them one more year. It looks like D'Amico Ryans is doing a great job putting together this young unit, and from there, maybe you'll take a look and see what you need some upgrades at and move forward.
Yeah, no, I agree with that one. Wrapping up the AFC, we got the AFC West. Current leaders right now are Kansas City Chiefs at 6-2, and then we have a 3-way tie for second with the Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos. Actually, Broncos are sitting at last with a 3-5 record. What do y'all think of their move is? Obviously, Raiders game is going on right now, so they're currently losing, but we'll just assume they're going to be 3-5 after this game. What do y'all think they should go?
I think the only one that should make a clear push is the Chargers. I think they have a couple things to figure out. But as far as the Raiders and the Broncos, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think, especially the Raiders, I mean, they still have Devontae Adams. They have guys that can move with value, especially to a contender. So I think it's something they really do need to consider in the next 24 hours. Broncos, they have Portland Sutton. There's a couple teams looking for a wide receiver 1 out there too. So maybe a little bit to, I guess, think about in cornerback situation too. I can't remember the name of their kind of cornerback 1 right now. If y'all can fill in on that one. Surtain, yeah, and his name's been tossed around a lot this week too for a contender. So I think Raiders and Broncos are teams that should look at doing short rebuilds, long rebuilds, however you want to look at it, but looking at selling this season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Broncos win yesterday was pretty promising. I feel like they might be kind of hitting a stride right now. Russ is having quietly a great year, definitely a bounce back year from last year. So seems like the Steve Smith comments woke Judy up a little bit, but I don't know if he's still on their track. I know it's been kind of between him and Sutton as far as maybe shopping them around and then Surtain's name getting passed around. Their defense has been pretty bad, and Surtain's probably the only good part of that defense. Would kind of suck to see them get rid of him, but if they can get what they feel like they want out of it, probably should try and sell him if they want to make a push this year. Russ isn't getting any younger, but they do have a lot of young guys around. The rest of the ball, their offensive line's pretty young. Wide receivers are young right now, so I don't know. We'll see. I think the Chargers, they're probably not going to sell anybody. They're in a good spot right now. Maybe, much as it pains me to say it, I don't know where Mike Williams is on his contract, but if a team was willing to take a bet on him and they could add somebody in, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do it, but they could, I guess. But aside from that, I don't really see them getting rid of anybody. And I think the Chiefs would love to make a push to get a wide receiver, if they could, like a bona fide wide receiver, but I don't know. They've been a little down. Obviously lost to the Broncos this past week. A lot of the games that I've been able to watch for the Chiefs have been, I'll call it somewhat uninspiring, unless Taylor Swift's there. And we'll see. But I think obviously the Chiefs are number one, I'm never going to put Patrick Mahomes out, and Chargers would probably lock down a second wild card spot for that division.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree. I think Kansas City has the wild card locked. I don't know if they have the number one seed locked, especially after losing to the Broncos this week. But I want to say that I think that the Chargers are more in the buyer category, in my opinion. They've kind of picked up a little bit of some steam. I think that, if they can kind of improve their defense, maybe by getting a veteran, I think that might help. The Broncos, I agree with y'all. I think that they should be selling off, but I don't know if there's much to really sell. And I know Sean Payton's not really happy with the squad that he's picked up so far. So I would say that if they could acquire some draft capital, they'd definitely look into it. But I would say the biggest seller, and in my opinion, one of the biggest sellers, I think, in the NFL right now, I think the Raiders. I think that they really need to take a look, top to bottom on that roster and see who's potentially has some good trade value. I think that that's a team that hasn't drafted well recently. I think it's a team that, is probably going to move on from their coach this offseason. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously just is not playing that well. I'm pretty sure he leads the league in turnovers. So, I think this is a team that moving forward, they really got to, that GM needs to take a look and kind of squeeze down on, hey, do we really think that it's worth keeping these guys for the long term, even if we're not really, in a bona fide position to compete? So we'll see, man. I hate to say it, but I think the Raiders with Devontae Adams, I think he's too talented to be sitting there on that team, especially with Jimmy G getting hurt here and there. And then, I hate to say it, but even like Josh Jacobs, he's a talented player that I think could go onto a solid team and actually produce and help a team compete and actually push for a Super Bowl. And another guy, I like to say this a couple times, but dude, Max Crosby is a beast. I hate to see him, waste another contract with the Raiders, but I think that, financially it's not going to really work out for a competitor to get him. But again, it's just, this team really needs some draft capital. I think they need to improve, all areas and all facets of the game on offense, defense, and even special teams. So we'll see how things go. But right now, yeah, I'd have to give the Raiders as one of the biggest sellers.
I agree. I hate seeing Devontae go from Green Bay to this. Obviously, Green Bay might have been a little bit, obviously it was a better situation. Thought it would be good for him, but just kind of falling apart. So I'd like to see Devontae get sold to maybe a team that's in more title contention. He's been one of the best wide receivers for the last 5 years. So he's definitely earned it to be on a contender. And I think Crosby's the same boat. That dude is an animal at defensive end. So I'd like to see him end up somewhere too.
All right, and that wraps up the AFC. We'll go ahead and run through the NFC here. Starting off the NFC East, I think the two playoff locks here: Philadelphia Eagles. I think Dallas Cowboys should make it as long as everyone stays healthy. Two question marks and kind of in that rebuild category: the New York Giants and the Washington Commanders. Do y'all think they should be selling, or do y'all think they should be kind of content with their roster?
I think Commanders the easier one of the two. I don't think they're that far away from actually a pretty decent team. They just need to find a good quarterback and fill some holes on the offensive line. But the Giants, I think they need to figure out a way to get out of Daniel Jones, frankly. They have some receiving talent. They have good O-line. Waller's been showing his stride a little bit. Saquon's been doing well also. Their defense isn't awful. I'm not going to say it's great, not good, but it's not awful. It's serviceable. But they need to figure out a way to find a quarterback for that team.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Daniel Jones, they need to nip that in the bud. Try to get rid of him if they can. They did just get rid of Leonard Williams today. That was an interesting move. He went to the Seahawks, which is kind of scary. But because he was probably one of the best defensive players on their D line at least. And I don't like what I see in New York at all. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Cowboys fan. It doesn't pain me to see that they're doing bad. And then for the Redskins case, it's just been so inconsistent. I mean, Howell can have a game that he just had this past weekend, or he can have the game that he had, 2 weekends ago. And it doesn't seem that there's much in between. So you'd probably like to have somebody more consistent. Wouldn't think that he would be a long-term solution for them anyways. But there's a lot of talent on the roster. The defense has done really well. They have probably two of the best defensive tackles in the league. So, I mean, if they were willing to part with one of them, maybe they could get some draft capital or maybe push for a veteran QB right now. But I don't know. They're pretty young, so be interesting. I think the Cowboys are kind of fine where they are. I sent that tweet today of Aaron Donald. I think it was total BS. But if there's any way that Jerry could make that happen, that would be really damn cool. I would buy a jersey tomorrow. And the Eagles are fine. They still have one of the best rosters in the league. So,
yeah, no, I agree with you guys again. Giants, I don't know if there's a ton to sell to, offensively at least. Their defense still has a few pieces here and there, but it looks like with the Giants, it's just they need a whole restart almost. Their offensive line, they drafted a lot of high picks or a lot of high valued picks, and that just really hasn't phased out for them. Daniel Jones, as much as we just said that they should find a way to nip that in the butt, there's nothing they can do. They signed him to a 4-year deal, so he's going to be on the team for at least another year or two after this season. And then for the Commanders, man, I think that they really need to consider selling. I think that Sam Howell is very, very inconsistent, and I don't think that they're going to be drafting high enough to go get one of the top tier quarterbacks. So, do you risk drafting a quarterback at, let's just say, 15 to 20, and you kind of roll with the punches there, or would you rather sell off your team, get the draft assets you need to move up if needed, and go get the guy that you really want? And then as far as the Cowboys and Eagles, they're both buyers in my opinion. I know that cap space might be a little tricky, but I think that they can make things work, especially in the NFC now with the Vikings not looking so hot with Kirk going down. But I think that we've kind of covered it all on the NFC East there.
Yeah, and like you just mentioned, the NFC North with the Vikings. We're going to go ahead and move on to them. Obviously, right now, front runners, the Detroit Lions. The Vikings were looking real hot. Obviously, Kirk Cousins just went down with a season-ending Achilles injury. Big question mark around, around the Vikings situation. As far as the Packers and the Bears, I think both of those. I think it's safe to assume both of those they don't have a shot for the playoffs. As far as the Minnesota Vikings is kind of the big question mark in the division. Do you think they should go out for a quarterback? Maybe like I've seen rumored Jameis Winston or Jimmy Garoppolo, something like that. What do y'all think about that?
I'm torn on them a little bit. Obviously, they've got injuries right now. They're a little bit banged up. Addison's been playing great, though. Jefferson, when he comes back, he's going to look solid also. If you can find the right quarterback, I think it's worth it, but don't give up the farm for a quarterback. That's what I would say. Don't sell your team your next couple of years in hopes of playoffs, but if you can find the right guy, a guy that's going to fit in your scheme and be able to manage your game, then absolutely do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, Jefferson's young, Addison's a rookie. Those two, once Jefferson comes back and performs the way that we all imagine he will, that's a scary 1-2 punch at wide receiver. Their offensive line has been playing really well. I really hate that Kirk went down when he did, because it seems like they were kind of finding their stride. I'm with you, Brandon. I don't think there's any reason to sell what they have right now, but I don't know. They're in a tough spot. Really hated to see Kirk go down like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, Kirk going down definitely throws a little bit of a hole into things. I would say that if they were to trade for a quarterback, I'm really hoping, and this is going to sound crazy, but I would really hope that they go for someone like Kyler Murray, a guy that has a lot of talent and is still pretty young in his career. I know the contract wouldn't be easy, but I think that there's something they could work out with Arizona to give them that first-round pick to get Kyler. So we'll see how things go. Like you guys said, their offensive line is pretty solid. Darrisaw's a beast, and I think that they have 2 stud wide receivers and a good still developing tight end in Hawkinson that's going to be he's going to be around for years to come. Their defense is playing a lot better too. As far as the Lions go, I'm really hoping that they kind of make a little bit of a splash. Their team is playing really well. I think that they're one of the better teams in the NFL, and especially in the NFC. But I think it's just missing a little something. I think if they could go out and get one big name and make that team just that much better, I really would hate to say it, but like right now, I think the Eagles still have the Lions beat no matter what. But if the Lions could get maybe, like I said, like an you guys mentioned like an Aaron Donald, or potentially like I mentioned earlier, like a Max Crosby or Devontae Adams. I mean, dude, this team would be insane. It would be scary. So yeah, we'll see how things turn out. But they got 24 hours to potentially make a splash play and really kind of push their team over that hump.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more divisions. We're a little short on time here, but we got the the NFC South. Currently a hodgepodge of underperforming teams. Do you think anyone has a shot to make the wild card? Obviously, one team has to make a division, unfortunately, or has to make a playoff spot, unfortunately. But everyone just kind of we thought it was going to be, we knew it was going to be the worst division in football going into the season, and it's kind of sitting right there where you expected it. But who do you think should rebuild or?
Can I go first on this one? I think they all need to sell.
Go for it.
I think they all need to sell. I think every team in there is not it. I don't think that they're going to compete against Dallas or Detroit or Philly or like even San Francisco. I mean, even if like the Rams had a long shot to make it, I would take the Rams over most of these teams, man. Like the New Orleans Saints have not been performing with Derek Carr. Tampa Bay just inefficient on offense. Their defense looks okay. The Falcons, Desmond Ridder isn't it. They need to get a quarterback. So I just think that all of them need to take a look at the selling for just a year. I mean, I think that these are some teams that have some rebuilds that are they're inevitable to happen to one of these franchises. So it's just time to kind of take a look and seeing like, hey, is it really worth trying to make this push if we know we're going to get trounced by the Eagles or someone?
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to sell on, especially like for the Bucks or New Orleans. Like there's still a lot of talent on the team. It's just none of it's really meshing together right now because it's kind of a hodgepodge of rosters and movement and stuff. So they could definitely get some nice draft capital or kind of pick and pop some veterans if they want to. But I'm with Tim. I think every team in there should be looking to kind of sell the assets that they have in order to either build through the draft, through picks, or start bringing in other veterans to try and make things work.
Yeah, I agree. Fire sale and compete to clinch the division.
Yeah.
All right, and last but not least, we have the NFC West. Late kind of bloomer here. We got the Seattle Seahawks, who are on a little bit of a hot streak, currently sitting at 5-2 in the division. Obviously, they just acquired for Leonard Williams today, so they got a little beef to their defense. And then sitting at number 2, we got the San Francisco 49ers, who are on a little bit of a slide, 3-game losing streak, with Deebo Samuels being out. But as far as, just go with everyone because everyone kind of fits in this category. Obviously, the Cardinals are rebuilding, so we can just ignore them. The Rams have good pieces. Stafford is questionable. He's listed as day-to-day with that broken finger. It is on his throwing hand, so kind of not avoidable. But they have some old veteran pieces that they do need draft capital. So do you think they're a team that's worth selling, or do you think Stafford's going to tough it out and they can, once they get Kyron Williams back, are they going to make a run for it?
I think the Rams need to really look at selling. You've got Aaron Donald. He's getting up there in age, and you can still get some pretty good value out of him right now. And then Cooper Kupp, I think the same way. But as far as Seahawks and 49ers, I buy all the way. I think the 49ers, it's a rough patch. Their momentum has kind of been taken out of their sail a little bit, or the wind's taken out of their sail, but I think they'll figure it back out. They'll be in that NFC title game kind of conversation. I think later in the year, they'll figure it. And then Seahawks too. They've got a average age team, I guess, now that I think about it. Like some young guys, some kind of older guys, got guys that are getting up there, but I think they're in a good spot to make a run. And this year, I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but a good playoff run. And then next year, especially, they could be looking more seriously at getting back up there.
Yeah, I said it earlier, but if the Rams would like to give the Cowboys Aaron Donald, that would be really freaking cool. Yeah, I think I don't know. Some of what I heard about Stafford's injury doesn't sound great. And I mean, he's getting there. So I think their window, they got what they wanted. I think it's time for them to start kind of looking. They have a lot of pieces that they could sell to kind of build a new team. And there's some stuff in the air with McVay saying that he's not sure how much longer he wants to coach. So I think there's kind of a lot of introspective look that the organization needs to take on and kind of maybe sell some assets and rebuild. I don't know. It's a weird situation in Los Angeles. San Fran, I think they're good. I think they just need to try and get healthy, maybe try and buy some backup positions right now to kind of get from, through this rough patch. They're probably fine. I think they're just hitting the skid. It happens to every team. The Seahawks picking up Leonard Williams, probably the biggest move so far. We'll see a lot more tomorrow, I'm sure. But I think if the Seahawks kind of pick and pop and pick up some veterans right now, they could really make a good splash. Similar to Detroit. Not as scary, but there's potential.
Yeah, I agree. I think that really what it comes down to with Seattle is just if they can secure and lock that division. San Francisco, again, very, very great team. I think that they are just on a little bit of a slide just because of some health concerns, but I hate to say that happens to every team. They deal with injuries. So for that to be an excuse, I don't know if it's an excuse, man. I think they lack the depth because they pay their top starters so much,
And they're old.
They're getting up there
Yeah,
too.
they're
none of
Williams
them are
for sure.
super young, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So
Except
I would say-
IU. IU's
Yeah.
a dog.
Ayuk for sure. He's still young, and Bosa's still pretty young too. So I agree with you guys. I think that they got a little bit of an aging team, but my thing that I really want to push is if Seattle can put together good enough squad to really lock down that that division. The 49ers, I mean, dude, it's hard to play in Seattle. Like, they have a great home field advantage. So if I'm Seattle, like you guys said, I would kind of try to pick and pop and get some veterans that could potentially help you push. But for the Rams, dude, I hate to say it, their time came and went, man. They got their Super Bowl, they got their ring, but I think it's time to really consider selling off some of these guys and at least just recap and get some draft capital to replace them.
All right, and that wraps up our trade deadline talk. If there's anybody that we missed on our list or any additions that you would like to add, go ahead and comment down below. Again, we do appreciate a like and a subscribe. Feel free to follow us all season long. We'll be posting every week. But until next week.